Welcome to the Salience Podcast, where we identify what stands out from all the noise.
Our guest today on the Salience Podcast is Greg Layton. Greg is the best-selling author of Chief Maker and is the CEO of a company of the same name. Greg has a really tight niche in the talent development market, focusing on helping people in organisations who are perhaps the most under pressure. These are the senior managers or the general managers who I describe as the meat in the sandwich. They have to deal with pressure from the chiefs above and staff and other managers below, and breaking into that C-suite is tough. Once they get there, my experience is that the chief role can offer some very unexpected challenges that perhaps they weren't thinking about when they were sticking their hand up for the job. So I've known Greg for around 10 years, and we catch up regularly to share ideas or support each other, or ski, climb and sail when we get the chance. And there's no one with a better idea of what it takes to break into the C-suite than Greg. And that's where I'd like to focus our interview today. So Greg, welcome.
Mate, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, well, look, before we dive into those skills, the sorts of knowledge and attributes that make a great chief, I'd like to know a little bit more about your own journey long before you were rubbing shoulders with other chiefs. So going way back to your childhood days, little Greg running around there, and I've got this image of your parents mainly pulling their hair out because I know what you're like as an adult, so I can only begin to imagine what you were like as a child. You know, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were an attacker?
Oh mate, when I was a tech, I just wanted to play sport. To be honest, that was it for me. Nothing was I was good at school and all that, but even when I was at school, that's all I wanted to do. And I remember one year, I think I was about 15. There's all these different extracurricular activities, and you used to get these little things at the end of the year that would tell you all the sports you'd been in. And I had 14 different sports I'd played that year. And I look back now, and now that I'm throwing my own kids around the sport, thinking my poor parents, they must have done some miles, taking me all over the city, dropping me off at whatever it was, rugby, swimming, athletics, basketball, volleyball. I just remember I just did everything. So, I think the best way to describe me as a little fella is I just was action, just wanted to do stuff, just experience things. I was all about experiencing new things, and I loved that, adventures and all that kind of stuff. So that was me as a.
And do you think that those experiences have set you up for what you're doing now and who you are now?
Yeah, I do. I do. Those formative years where my parents fed that inquisitive nature and that curiosity and my my love of whatever athletic endeavour it was, and I think they fed it in such a way that it just kept growing, right? And I've never stopped. I just love learning new things. I've always loved it. I didn't understand that for a long time. I didn't get it because I didn't study hard ever until I was into my late 20s. I just turned up to school and did what I could and just winged it, really, to be honest. Just winged it. But I had a good time doing it, and I still learned enough to so.
Yeah. This is getting to this idea of salience now, and those changes, that switch. You've got this incredible focus on sports. In fact, just about anything. You've got 14 sports that you're ticking off. You're bouncing around. Your parents are putting up some miles in the car, morning, midday, and night, by the sound of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And somewhere in there's a change. Even as an adult, you're into ultra marathons, and you've trained with the Shaolin monks, and you've been into all sorts of things at a high level, particularly rugby, I know. And then somewhere in there, you've ended up running the premier coaching training service for chief makers, for chiefs looking to break into the C-suite. Something happened along the way where you've gone from playing every sport imaginable to this role now. What happened? Were there any pivots in there or tipping points? What happened?
Well, I think a couple of things. You at some point you have to shift from athletic to the intellectual. right. For a couple of reasons. One, I realised that I was not actually that great an athlete. Convinced, I didn't really have the natural DNA, and I didn't really have at that time the skill. But whatever, I was happy to participate. But I always knew as I went through, did a business degree and was in the business world. I always knew my path was the corporate kind of path, and I did pretty well pretty early. But the piece that happened was a general dissatisfaction with the status quo. So I was at work and things didn't happen fast enough. And then I got my first leadership role and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, not a clue. And I remember two people in my team had this fight, and it ended up like both of them crying in a meeting room to me. And I would have been 26. They were both 40 odd. And I was looking at these people going, what the hell do I do now? I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't think I'm allowed to say snap out of it because so I was like, and I can't remember what I said, to be honest, but I remember feeling like it was inadequate and going home going, when do you learn this stuff? I didn't teach it at business school. Well, I didn't go to that many classes, but I'm pretty sure they didn't teach it at business school. And then what happened was I left and started coaching and got into the world of individual coaching and excellence, just like, that's where you and I came across our paths. And I started coaching more and more senior people. I started coaching a lot of C-suite CEOs and senior executives. I still do that a lot. I take away a lot of executive teams. But the reason we built Chief Maker was, as an example, when I speak to a lot of C-suiters or CEOs, I'll say, when you build a strategy and you build a culture plan and you build a way forward of this business, where in the organizational structure does it stop? Does it falter? Does it slow down? Mm. And they always, almost without, let's say 99% of the time they say the middle management, right? These GMs, senior managers, middle managers of mid to large organizations. And I sort of sit there and I think, well, what level of, like you and I have done a lot of working in how to coach elite performance. And I think about the level of training and coaching these individuals get as they come up from a professional into maybe their first supervisor role, into a leadership role. And they might have done, let's say, 3 years in a technical course, engineering, operations, legal, technology, like an IT course or something. So they've done 3 years solid training on that. Then they might do an extension course, some CPD hours, all of that's technical. So they've got a sum of years and years and years of learning the technical skill. Then we go, hey, we need you to take all these people and we're going to make you the manager of those people. And we're going to put you on a 2-day program. And plus, you got these new targets. Plus, not only got to lead them, I need you to implement this new system. And it's got to be done by this time. And then halfway through that, they change your goalposts. And and there's email, social media, there's 5 different forms of communication. There's WhatsApp, there's MS Teams. And these individuals, one, have had no training in elite personal performance, how to master their mind, their psychology, beat overwhelm, deal with positive, good routines, mindset, all these things that you and I talk about. Secondarily, they've had 2 days of leadership training, which is probably low-grade training because they don't have any budget to spend on it, right? So what I knew I needed to do was, because I felt for these people, I was often sitting in the trenches with them, when their boss would say, you need to go and talk to this person because they're not following the game plan here. And I'm going and sit with them and I'm thinking, wow, you don't have the arsenal at your disposal to do this job. And so we built Chief Maker for 2 reasons, right? One was to help all those people have better lives and better careers because they were struggling and they would go home stressed and overwhelmed and they walk in the door and look at their kids and they're like, I don't like my job. And we know, and you and I know that when someone walks in the door and they're not happy with their career, their family's well-being suffers. So we can see the purpose. If we get this right and we develop these individuals, they're going to do a better job at work. They're going to like their careers more. Their families are going to be better off. And then the executives that I often talk to start to feel a bit better about themselves because the track record they're trying to build gets nailed. So that's why we did it, to help the executives leave a track record and do a great thing and leave a legacy and help the middle managers nail their careers and just be happy and proud of themselves in a really good way.
Yeah. I really like that focus on the whole of life, and that really simple piece of evidence there that when you go home, how do you relate with your family after your day at work? Are you energized? Have you had a good day, or are you in fact destroyed? And
this book here, it's called Wellbeing: The 5 Essential Elements. Tom Rath, Jim Harper. It's got these stats in it that often blow your mind, and one of them is exactly that. That if someone is, I think they call it suffering or struggling at work, their family members, I think it's 60 to 80% more likely to be struggling as well. That makes sense when you think about it intuitively, but when someone puts a number on it and it's that drastic, you think, oh my God, wow, right. This is where one of my favorite quotes of all time is leaders are dealers in hope. And what I often think is these individuals in the middle layers cannot see the forest through the trees. It's just murky. It's foggy. It's the rat race. There's no hope. They don't feel like they're moving forward. They don't have clarity a lot of the time. Some of them do. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot that don't. And I believe as leaders, and our job is to give them that. In fact, I think we have to do that. It's a damn well responsibility to do that, because I know, and the stats now prove the cost of us not doing it.
I've got another question here that sort of follows on from that, and it might be the same answer to both parts of my question, or it might be different, and I'm curious to know if there is a difference. And it's those. I'm just thinking about those people you've just described, and I'm thinking about the Chiefs, and I'm wondering if there are differences that you'd be looking for. So let's do it this way. Imagine you're on a selection panel for a CEO for a business, right? Well, what are you looking for, and what question would you ask at interview? And then I'm going to ask the same question again for that next rung down, sort of more GM level, where you're sort of you maybe not in the C-suite, but you're that next upper level middle management. Tell us what you'd be looking for. Let's go to the CEO first. What are you looking for? Yeah. What question would you ask?
So first of all, I'm just going to assume that they've got the technical skill, right? So we know they've ticked the boxes, whatever industry profession they're in, that's all been done. That they're now sitting in front of me. I've asked a bunch of questions that they can say, oh, this is the kind of, this would be a normal strategy. They can lay it out, right? And then if you're going to CEO interview, you have to be able to lay it out, right? So if they can lay it all out, then what am I really, really looking for here? And in my mind, I'm looking for judgment, right? So I'm looking for, are you emotionally aware to have wisdom applied to your business? So what I often find so I'll often talk about the difference between a thoroughbred and a draft horse and a pasture horse and an Arabian, right? A lot of executives I meet, they're thoroughbreds. They get to work and they just gallop, right? And they gallop, and right next to them is a draft horse, and they're like, keep up. And the draft horse is doing all the damn work. You know what I mean? And so you get this distance between the two. The Arabians over here doing all the show and the telling, like the great communication and everything. But the once again, that thoroughbred's still racing. And so they'll often get to work in the morning and everyone will be sitting around in this beautiful green grass in a pasture. And it'll trot the thoroughbred and you'll go, oh, great. Oh, hey, everybody, there's green grass over the hill over here. Let's all go and get that green grass. And everyone's like, mate, there's grass here. It's really good. It's like, no, we're horses. We run. And everyone's like, here we go again. And so, they gallop up the hill. And they get to the top of the hill and there's this beautiful pasture. It's great. They get up there. It's wonderful. Okay, righto, you were right. We'll put our heads down and everyone starts eating grass, and the pasture horse is happy again, and the thoroughbred and the Arabian's happy. The mane's looking wonderful. Eyes are sparkling, right? And then the draft was like, oh, this is great. They put their heads down and start eating all the grass. Things are good. And then the thoroughbred looks up and goes, there's another hill, and there's another. And, hey, everybody, let's go running to it. And it was like, yeah. And that's sort of how often goes on, right? So what I'm looking for is I want the thoroughbred mentality, but I want one with wisdom. Who can read what's going on with the people around them, right? So my sort of question would be something like this is, how do you know if your people are on board with you or not?
Yeah.
Right. What are you looking for? Or maybe I'll ask them, tell me a story about a time you took a team to a whole new place. What did you do? What were the key moments? How did it play out? Now, I've watched a lot of turnarounds, and if they can't tell me some of the key things, I'm thinking, you've never really done this. They put their finger on, there was a couple of key people, a couple of key moments, constant repetition of the message, insight, wisdom, time. Then I'm thinking, thoroughbred, but you've put the wisdom hat on as well, and I'll take you.
Yeah, wow. I love that story. You were just describing me and my chief operating officer. And the number of times he goes, hey, look at the grass under your feet. We've got all this stuff going on right here, and you're looking at like shiny something in Europe. What are you doing?
Yeah.
We have that conversation every second week.
What's important is a business needs to have all the horses.
Yeah.
It can't just have all thoroughbreds. It's got to have some draft horses. It's got to have some pasture horses, and it's got to have some Arabians. And if you don't get that right, then the business will, I believe, it'll fail. You need some people who can do the work, and then you need some thoroughbreds that will create dissatisfaction with the status quo. But also, if they can be smart enough to go, okay, I can be measured here, I can do this, then I think you get a real winning formula.
Yeah, I like that. There are a few things you said in there that were real tangibles. I think this idea that the CEO comes in. Yeah, it's an absolute given that they've got the technical skills. We know that. You're not even going to interview them if they've not got some idea of what the business is about.
Yeah.
But then you go, let's evaluate their judgment. And one of the things you said was, first of all, you want to see how do they lay it out. Synthesizing, presenting that kind of strategic understanding of where they want to take the business, what all that's about. And then I really like that wisdom, the application of awareness of people and what's required to get a team. And again, I really like the key point you made there about demonstrate how you've turned a team around or brought a team on a journey, and what specifically are they doing? Not kind of some fluff. But what did they do to really turn that around? And
like as an example of that, one thing I'll be listening for is things like values, and I mean everyone's got values, right? I mean, but most have no idea what they are, and so if they go, oh well, we launched these values and we launched them across the country, and it went really well, but they don't talk about how they operationalize that, how they put it into the operating rhythm of the business. If they don't talk about how they had symbolic demonstrations of those, how they brought it to life with awards, and if I'm like, then you don't get it. They're just words on a wall, in which case you haven't lived it. You've not lived having to genuinely show vulnerability that you stuffed up on a value, or you haven't sacrificed a senior member of staff because they really, really sacrificed one publicly, and you now need to let them go. That's hard because that was the best performer in your team, and all those things are really tricky, right? So what I'm looking for is that, are you measured? Do you have good judgment? Have you got wisdom? And that's the add-on. So that'll be the CEO anyway.
Yeah, next level down, GMs, working to, supporting, doing that next role, and there's a real for me there's a real appreciation of those folks who go, I don't really want to be the CEO. That's not my gig. But you know what? I can do a really good job here, and I can really enjoy this. Yep. So, some of them are aspirational. Great. I've got no problem with that. And others can put their hand up and say, hey, this is my gig. I'm really happy in this role. But what are we looking for there? What sort of attributes are we looking? Are they the same as the CEO, or are we looking for a bit different type of horse?
You're still going to have thoroughbreds, but you're also going to have probably a couple of others in there as well, to be honest. Definitely Arabians and draft horses, no sweat, right? But I'll just say this, to quickly define the difference between a GM and maybe a manager. A GM, in my mind, has multiple managers reporting to them, right? So they lead leaders of teams. And so they might have 6 to 8 individuals reporting to them who are all also leaders. So when I'm looking at a GM, if I'm ideally trying to think, okay, you're going to be the GM of my business, I'm looking for someone who knows the particular that particular department or specialization. They need to know that pretty well. They need to have high levels of technical proficiency, because they will be asking hard questions, right? And they will spend 60% of their time in ops trying to work out what's going on there, right? Maybe even more. Then I need them to be able to describe to me how they're going to make step change improvements in their business. So do they know how to pull certain levers to improve the business? Maybe a technology project, a people piece, there's an operational excellence piece. What is going to be their moves that will fundamentally improve their results? What that tells me is they understand how the business works. Right. And if they understand the metrics and the scoreboards and they can say, well, if we make these changes, and they can talk about how that will improve the lead lag indicators that will give us some results, I'm thinking, you actually get the way this business works. You understand it. And what actually happens a lot of the time is I'm honest, that they don't really understand how the business operates as a unit. Now, I don't believe that's always their fault. I think when people get to that level, they really need to be inducted into the way the whole business connects together to either make money or deliver service, depending on if it's an agency or if it's a corporation or a not-for-profit, whatever it is that defines that gives you oxygen to breathe, so to speak, like a cash flow or whatever's major for you. If you don't know how your business does that and what the percentages are and the value chain for that, how it all fits together, then you're really going to battle GM level, I believe, because it's a collaboration across the business.
Yeah, great insight there. Great insight for recruiters. Great insight for us when we're looking to place attention on what's important in these really critical roles. You know, you get this wrong, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix the problem afterwards, and the carnage can be extensive.
I think the next thing I'm looking for is some courage. Right, because we can talk ourselves out of things because of potential conflict, because of something difficult, we don't know how to do it. So I'll give you an example. I was working with some guys in Africa that had it was a mining company. There was a supply chain issue with these guys at site. Now the supply chain issue was costing them $15 million each half US each half year, right? So $30 million annually, right? The problem was that the mine site and the supply chain team had different KPIs. The KPIs for the supply chain team was to reduce the cost of the supply chain to save money. And the guys at site were trying to increase the availability of their machines, so they needed better quality parts faster, which cost more. Right? So you can see what's going on. The suppliers that turn up slower, lower quality, leads to reduced vehicle availability. The guys at site are going, hey, you've got to fix it. So all of a sudden we've got this conflict, right? And it had been brewing, and both like good people, both sides, right? Like I knew them all very well, good people. And but it just became a bit too difficult to work out. And I remember being at site and I was chatting to the guy that was leading it, and I said, "What's going on?" And he would tell me about this problem. What's it worth? And he said, "It's $15 million." And I'm like, what? $15 million? And I said, "What project do you have in your business right now that can save that much money?" And he goes, "Oh, not really anytime soon." And I was like, "Well, let's get on a plane and go to Joburg." So we got on a plane and went to Joburg, and we called them when we arrived. Said, "Oh, we're here. We're here for 2 days. We've got to fix this." And mate, it was fixed 4 hours later. And so in 4 hours of that courage to just get up and get moving and don't worry about all the shit and all the angst, just let's get in here and fix it. It's all right. We can work this out. Come with the right mindset. And I'm not joking. Like less than 24 hours after we had that first conversation, the problem was fixed. And the business saved $15 million each half. Done. And that was because we got the right mindset, with a bit of courage, and went and fixed it. And I'm looking for a bit of that if I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, what a great tangible piece of value into the business. And again, really quickly there, being able to identify that tension between mismatched KPIs. And you were talking about KPIs earlier for, particularly for GMs, understanding how the business runs and how the performance of the business translates into lead and lag indicators. And this is something I've been grappling with for many years, where I guess particularly looking to try and avoid the Cobra effect. Have you come across that in your travels? So back in the British imperial days, when they occupied India, they wanted to reduce the number of deaths from cobra bites in India. So what they did was they put a bounty: bring us a cobra, we'll give you a certain amount of money, and let's see if we can eradicate them. And of course, very quickly, entrepreneurial Indians of the day started breeding cobras so that they could cash in.
Yes.
And then, of course, the British Empire got wind of this and said, okay, well, we're not going to do that anymore. So all these entrepreneurs went out of business and released their snakes, and there were in fact more cobras running around biting everybody. Right. So this is a metaphor for distortion of KPIs in the business. Pretty well, as soon as you set a KPI, somebody somewhere is going to try and game it so that they look good.
Yeah. And it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah. So what do you do? When you're looking at KPIs that are not so much on the content of the business, but the processes and the governance and the relationships behind it, things like culture. Have you got any ideas of any KPIs or any indices, lead lag, that have worked for you? Anywhere that you go to really spot what's salient to get the business to perform?
Can I just start with the one to focus on is in people's employment contracts. Right, because so when I do stakeholder management, and so we sit down and do this, we do like a stakeholder map, and then I take people through this process of getting inside the head, like right inside, like you and I would talk about, properly going into second position and working out what's going on with this individual, what's going on with them, what's their background, what keeps them up at night, what kind of pressure is their boss putting on them, what are their bonus-linked incentives, right? That if you don't know your boss's bonus-linked incentives, or the peer who you're trying to influence, if you don't know their bonus-linked incentives, you don't know them. Right. And it's one of the first questions I ask. Do you know how that person is being incentivized through their bonuses and their salary? And if you can't answer it, you're barking up. You're not ready. You're not ready to talk to them. So that kind of stuff, what's their personality type, if you're aware of it, if you can find that out. What kind of pressures, what's their current strategy, what are their current priorities. If you can get all this information, then you're in a position to properly influence someone. So that would be the first thing I'd say, is understand what that is. As far as any particular lead lag indicators, I think it is quite industry or profession specific, right? And I think that's important. Nothing's really jumping to mind, so I don't want to just blurt out something straight away. But I also feel like it's worthwhile doing a lot of research into this, because it can really change the game. The second thing is, when you're talking about numbers and lead and lag indicators, they need to have three key things, right? They need to be relevant, timely, and accurate. Okay, so if someone wants to make data-driven decisions in the minute, right? Data-driven decisions in the minute, they need data that is timely, on time, relevant to them and their role and what they do, and accurate. And if you look at the data you give your leaders or your operational staff, you ask yourself those three questions. Do they get the data in time to make a good decision? Or is it too late? Right? Is the data relevant to their role? So as an example, I've worked with a mining company once that gave their drill rigs underneath the ground a number that was to do with stuff on the top of the ground. And they're like, that has nothing to do with me and the job that I'm trying to do at my work every single day. So contact centers are often really good at timely, relevant, accurate data. Like you walk in, there's often a scoreboard. how many calls, how many seconds or minutes they've been waiting, customer sat score for the day. All this stuff can be live. It's a great scoreboard. Think about statistics and scoreboard from sport, and you'll get a real sense of this. And I think that movie Moneyball was a good starter on this. But each team should be thinking, what would be our scoreboard we might look at throughout the week or the month, so that when we get to the end of the month, we know these lead indicators will tell us if we're going to hit our target or not. Because we normally don't. The scoreboard isn't finalised until the end, right? But you often get statistics. So in some industries or some professions, the scoreboard's live. You know exactly what's going on. But in a lot of them, it isn't. Right, so when you go and play sport, the scoreboard's at the end of the field or the side of the court, and you know that there's only how many minutes to go, so you know what's required to do your job to win. Now, in business, often there isn't a scoreboard anywhere. There's often the stats come 3 days later, so we lose that urgency. We lose that ability to make some changes and some moves. And when I was talking before about does the general manager know how the business wins, how it makes money, how it delivers great service, they've got to understand the lead metrics, the lag metrics, or the scoreboard, because what they want to do, when I say, Matt, what move is what levers they can pull, that's got to shift these numbers. Because what is this? What is it about more than anything? So if I'm a leader, I must have. If you don't have a track record, I'm not hiring you for anything.
Yeah. So past history.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something I did a few years ago that was, I guess it was really quite wicked. And it's this idea of bonus linked incentives and making the link to what you said about, it's almost like a game where if you've got the scoreboard, you know what game you're in, you know what the score is. And sometimes in organizations you come in and there people talk about silos and you go, actually, there's 3 games being played here. Like, it's not even the same game, So forget about scoring it. We're not even playing the same sport, let alone on the same team. And I had this situation where 3 silos, 3 GMs, really a little bit hostile with each other, competing for resources, competing to whatever it was going on for them. So I set them up and I said, okay, I want you to identify, more or less different words, but your bonus linked incentives. I want you to work out what they are, and then you're going to share them with your buddies, and we're going to check for this, right? So they worked out their bonus linked incentives, and I got them to get really tough with each other. And then once they'd done all of that, and there's a little bit of hostility here. So you got the people, and you got the ops people, and you got the innovations crowd. So you got three of these bunnies setting each other up for tough year ahead. And then I got them to swap their bonus incentives with a person next to them and say, you're only going to get that bonus if they deliver into their thing. So you're going to get their bonus and they're going to get your bonus. So you need to work out how you're going to support them to get that, or guess what? You're getting zip. And suddenly the dynamic changed when their incentive was about how well the other person performed. That made for a really interesting dynamic. Quite a wicked thing to do, but I think, breaks down silos pretty quick.
Your client, if you got trust with them and it's working and I know you would. Sometimes you've got to be a bit wicked in business, and bold and different, just to break the shackles a bit, because we're really good at the frog in the slowly boiling water. And they're not making those moves because of these patterns of behavior and relations that stifle us and almost trap us into a certain way of operating. I think when you're looking at metrics, and if you bring a team together, I'll often work with an exec team and say, what's our one number? Our one number. And they'll often battle with it. And then we'll often say, well, whatever number you think it is, let's add some numbers, add some size to it so it becomes what we call a bit epic, because then we have to fundamentally change the way we operate. So the team won't unite so well around a number that they can sort of feel like is achievable, because they can just keep their modus operandi going, or potentially not working together that well. But if we make the number bigger, and then we put that in their bonus link targets in particular, then the game changes. And if you don't have bonus link targets and just say you work for an agency, that's fine. But people often motivated differently in that world, which is wonderful. It's just about making sure that we understand what the KPIs and scoreboard look like.
Yeah.
So you need to then, that scoreboard, by the way, then needs to be publicly visible and updated every month. So when I say where are your scoreboards and things, I mean on the walls at work, and everyone can see how we as a team are performing.
Ooh.
It doesn't exist in a slide deck in management team folder, then reports, monthly reports, strategy, like deep within the file structure. It's on the wall where everyone can see it, and once a month or once a week you gather around it and you talk about it as a team. And when you nail your number together, you celebrate. You celebrate.
Yeah, that's great.
And if you miss out, you're not happy.
Yeah, I've managed something similar with a few organizations around culture, where we've put up a culture heat map, which is self-identified cultural metrics. So it's right from the ground up. Everyone's participate. They get the heat map. They give scores on the doors. And then we put it on the wall in big, full Technicolor. This is our culture right now. What are we going to do about it? And every time they walk past, they come to work, they're walking past their cultural metrics, and they're responsible for that.
Yeah, exactly. That's nice. Yeah, any form of diagnostic should be full of wonderful lead indicators. Right? I certainly use a few, and I use a few because they give us that data and they help us understand the complexity of a really difficult system. So culture is a big system. It's complex. A business or organization, very complex, and you need to be able to measure. So when you in any sort of leadership or coaching environment, we need to be able to be brilliant first and foremost at diagnosing the real problem. Right. And normally that will require some form of diagnostic. Right, where, as you say, you've got a heat map of a whole range of factors. I use one similar that talk about an entire organization or just a team within it. We get everyone to fill out the thing. We get a sense of where it's at. Then we can come with the team and say, hey, this is how you perform, but also this is how you all answered. Anonymously. So we've got different answers. Some people think we've got great vision or great people development here. Other people think we're terrible at it. Yeah. So we've got either no problem or a problem. And so as a leader, you've got to diagnose better than anyone. Then you need to be able to prescribe, right, what the solution to that is with a fair amount of accuracy. And then you need to take your medicine and do it, which means essentially take action and put in place some things to improve. And then you go back and diagnose again, see how well you went. And then you understand how business works. Because you made moves that made a difference to a diagnostic. And did the diagnostic then lead to better team or company or organization results, as in bottom line or delivery standards or whatever your win was for you, right? And if you didn't, then you've got to look at the diagnostic again. You keep learning. This is what we call high-performance systems and diagnostics. And you have your culture and resilience. I know that. And they're cracking. So if people haven't been using yours yet, they should be.
Likewise, I think what's really to the point here is that this is evidence-based decision making, evidence-based performance. If you ain't tracking it, it's not happening. So important that you've got these real conversations about what are we doing and how do we know. There's no fairy dust here. It's getting real tangible stuff up, highly visible so everyone can see it. We've got accountability throughout the business. This isn't just the top or the bottom or the middle. It's everybody owning it. I love that. And I've just been sort of thinking as you've gone, and I've got two more questions for you, and they relate to this one number, but I'd like to really expand your thinking now. Not just into a business, not just into teams, but I'd like you to think about the whole planet, right? I'd like you to think, if you could direct people's attention to something that's important in the world, to one thing, what would it be, and how would you track it?
I think, given my passion for coaching, it would be education. And the reason for that is that we know education is a very strong indicator of not only health and well-being, but the quality of life, how well a country or a culture improves over time, the economic growth, the quality of services. The more educated they are, the more wealth they have, the more they can look after the planet. the quality of water. We know that women's rights and minority groups are looked after better because you've got a better educated group of people. So in my mind, if I was to pick one thing, it would be education level and how we could facilitate making that better globally. If I could then pick one that I hope which I believe we do incredibly poorly in any first world country, and that is the quality of education around understanding psychology of us as human beings. So we don't teach that at school. But where does all the stress come in life? Quality of relationships, ability to deal with resilience, with challenging scenarios, understanding our thinking. We don't teach is the inner work, the stuff up in our brain and our hearts and our souls. We are absolutely rubbish at teaching it. At school level, we don't teach it at all at college level unless you do psychology. And if I could think about what I can draw this line in the sand between my ability to deal with the challenges of life before I educated myself in this world, and I choose those words carefully, educated myself, right? No one put me through that. I put myself through that, right? And what I can deal with now and why I thrive in life is I can't believe how I operated in the world before it without knowing this stuff. I had biases. I was weak. I was emotional. I was irrational. I didn't get things. I didn't understand how I thought. I had no control over this individual. And as a result, the things that happened in my life were out of my control, really. That's why maybe a bit of natural talent, which is totally limited. And so I sort of feel like step one is get everybody educated. Critical thinking into individuals globally, right? Let's switch them on. And we're not good at it. That'll be number one. Number two, then after that, if we can do that, teach people psychology.
Yeah, well, I really like that. I think you've nailed it there. And it really drew my attention to some of the courses we've done, even with universities who, peak of education, people have been educated for, more than a decade before they get there, often at a pretty high level, and they've got accolades to get into some of the best universities in the world. The first module that we have when we've got these partnerships is learning to learn, because they've got no idea how to learn. No one's ever taught them how to use the senses to bootstrap memory, to make connections, to use mind maps, to do any of the sorts of things of accelerated learning. No one's got any idea. And you go, how can you have got here without that?
Yeah, I got all the way through school, and I went through a business degree, and I got reasonably good marks right all the way through. And the first time I learned accelerated learning, I was 20.
I know. I was 35. The
year after that, I read 100 books in a year.
Yeah.
Right. And I went, what the hell has been going wrong? And then, can you imagine the difference in me in that year? It's just life-changing, right? And then I started learning coaching. And so my brain is all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, switched on, and I'm starting to see the world in a different light. And then because you realise you've been a bit of a pork chop for quite a few years, you start to feel like you need to make up for some of the lost ground. So, so there was a bit of urgency to try and be a bit of a better human being. And get my career into a place where I thought it would be reasonable. But, oh my God, we should be teaching this. To everyone, mate. I do a lot of work in men's health, you know that. And we take guys away, and one of the differences between the organisation I run and others is we teach men skill. I teach them frameworks and micro skills. So they haven't hugged any trees, right? I saw this one program down on the Gold Coast where they man up and look each other in the eye and stare each other down. I'm like, what the hell does that teach you? How to be an aggressive tool? That doesn't make sense to me. That's not being a man. Being a man is doing the inner work and learning how to respond. Like when maybe your partner says something you don't like and your ego fires up, right? Then how do you respond to that? Calm your ego down, deal with it, look inside yourself, take ownership, and all these little bits and pieces that are so important to a happy life. I I know we're one of the ones that ever teach that, right? And I just think we've got to nail that, mate. We just have to. And try to be crazy that we're not. And that's why you and I do what we do, because we want people to have those skills. Because I want people to operate at a higher level than they do most of the time.
Yeah, great. I've got one last question for you. And this circles all the way back to the beginning when I asked you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And now that you're here, what do you want to do when you grow up, mate? What's next? What's the future aspirations?
Oh, mate, so we have a vision. I've been doing a vision board now for 14 years. There's been one thing on that vision board consistently ever since when my wife and I got married a couple of years. We did vision boards and all that, and we did them separately, and then we come together, right? Because we don't want to we don't want to sway the other person's vision of the future. And what was really interesting is we both had this thing on there that we wanted to create a place, a very special place, sort of like a lodge, where we can coach what we coach and give people a reset, a reconnect to the planet, a reconnect to their soul, a reconnect to their brain, so they can come there maybe once a year and just start again. And it's their annual place they come to. It's special. It's probably in the hills. It's just a sacred kind of place, if you know what I mean, right? That's for you. And I've always wanted that. Initially, when I was a young bloke, I wanted to call it the center of human performance, or whatever it was. I can't remember. Now I just want it to be the lodge, right? And I want it to have something special. To be honest, it's about 5 to 8 years away. But that's just one element of what we're trying to do. But that's it, But we've got the business. I'm running 3 businesses and on a board of another at the moment, so I'm just trying to work out how to balance all that. So it's an important time, but it's great.
Yeah, look, fantastic. Thank you for the interview today. I've just really enjoyed understanding. I've learned a lot there, and I hope our listeners can appreciate that. If you want to reach out, we're going to have some connections to Chief Maker on the podcast and on our website, frontlinemind.com. And thanks very much, Greg. Terrific.
It's so good. And I'll see you probably, if not before, I'll see you on the slopes next year.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Salience Podcast. Please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to the Frontline Mind newsletter by visiting our website at frontlinemind.com. Have you got a topic you would like some more salience on? Send us a message on LinkedIn or email team@frontlinemind.com.